Hello, welcome to the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Alex Hood, who many people might know from her work as a comic for House of Decline. That's Haus, House of Decline on socials, and from her own website and things of that nature that you can see all the different comics that she's made over the years, kind of critiquing everything from, just social discourse to politics to philosophy to whatever the case may be, to just some really funny, humorous comics that she's become well known for kind of in the internet world. Well, she is also an absolutely fantastic musician, and on Halloween this year she released an album under the artist name Anti-Spectacular. Her debut album is called Psychogeography. We dive into Alex's probably somewhat lesser known musical background. If you listen to this record, and if you have not already, before you listen to this, go ahead and pause this and go listen to the whole album. The link will be below for it. It's on Bandcamp. Really, I think she kind of downplays it in the recording here, but an extremely talented musician, both with guitar, with bass, with songwriting, with her vocals, and with her lyrics. Really well thought out on the lyrical front. Has a lot to say in this album that we break down. And it was just really cool to kind of see her share this, listen to it, be extremely impressed, and get her on the show and kind of break down where music became a big influence for her and some of the influences on the record. So again, this record is really for anybody that listens to any kind of music. I kind of repeatedly say in the recording, timeless is a word I would use for this sort of rock music that she put out here, that pretty much anybody that likes good music could get into to varying degrees. And I just really appreciate that Alex came on and talked to me about this. We dive into it pretty deep and kind of go off on some different topics that the songs are about or are related to and things of that nature. So definitely worth listening through the whole thing. I really hope you enjoy Alex's breakdown of, again, her debut album, Psychogeography, under the artist name Anti-Spectacular on Bandcamp. Again, all those links will be below. If you are not familiar with Alex and you want to follow her to see her work both on the music front, she said she's going to be doing more music going forward, as well as her comics and all the other materials that she's known for online. You can follow her at House of Decline on all socials. That's, again, HAUSOF Decline. I don't know why I'm spelling out of whatever. And you can find her there. Again, all those links will be below. And I just hope you really enjoy the episode. And again, thanks so much to Alex for coming onto the show and breaking this album down with me. Before we get into the episode, just as a reminder for all my usual plugs, you can find the podcast on all socials at thepowerlesspod. You can email me at thepowerlesspod@gmail.com if you want to be on the show. If you just want to tell me what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, whatever the hell else, I'd be happy to hear from you. We've had a lot of great episodes over the last couple of weeks. Just put out an episode with a metalcore band, Psyche, out of Athens, Greece. Just put out another great episode with an indie rock, indie pop group called Line out of Madison, Wisconsin. Put out another recent one of Secret Gardens, which is an artist that has been on here twice now, breaking down their records, and Greg's, very hands-on approach to this tetralogy of albums he put out about each of the seasons. Talk about all that kind of stuff. We've also had episodes, if you're into kind of political podcasts and things of that nature. I talked to Palestinian journalist Abu Bakr Abed recently about the reality in Gaza. He lives in Deir al-Balah. We break down kind of the daily reality for people in Palestine, as well as what he had to say about the presidential election at the time. We recorded it the day before the election. I've spoken to Jen, aka Big C, who has her own great podcast called How the Red Was Won, where we talk about the election recap and all those kinds of things. And I've had on a lot of other people to kind of break down some of their news stories. It might be journalists as well as political commentators or activists, along with, of course, musicians and producers. So if you're in any of those veins and you hear this for the first time, or you are a regular listener and decide I actually want to hit him up to be on the show, please reach out to me. I always love to have new people on the program, whether music or political. So yeah, just make sure to reach out to me at all those different places, and I'd be happy to have you on. We also do have a merch store. I don't really plug these things that often, but the logo in the back there is on hoodies and mugs and all those different things. You can find that at the link tree below. We've got a Patreon. It's $2.50 a month. If you're so inclined to do that, that would be great. It's literally less than half of a cup of coffee at this point. If you go to coffee shops, probably won't notice it out of your bank account, and the very increasing cost of everything in the world. So in a weird way, you'll notice it even less than before, probably. But I digress. Either way, happy to have everybody on. It's been absolutely fantastic to keep the show going. We're into over year 2 now, which is crazy. Going to be coming up on episode 100 in a month or so. So yeah, I just really hope after all my ramblings, you continue to enjoy the show. Thanks so much for listening. And we'll just get right into the episode here with Alex Hood, aka House of Decline. Their artist title, Anti-Spectacular, breaking down the album Psychogeography on the Powerless Podcast. Thanks so much. I'm here for the next episode of the Powerless Podcast with Alex Hood, who is the vocalist, guitarist, songwriter, all things production with the project Anti-Spectacular. You just put out, I meant to ask this before we started recording, but I'm fine with sounding like I don't know everything, I guess, when we get started. Was this the debut record that you've put out yourself? Is this the first release you've done?
Yeah, this is the first album under this moniker. I've had various, projects throughout the years that have not seen the light of day or anything like that. But for some reason, recently I've been feeling more confident. Yeah. Decided to put this out there. Yeah.
Yeah, Psychogeography, the album from, under your sort of artist moniker here, Anti-Spectacular. When I first saw you post this on your House of Decline Blue Sky account, admittedly, I messaged you right before I listened to it because I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I haven't seen somebody that's kind of had your kind of platform you've done with your comics and your podcast and everything else like that. Just like put out an album on Bandcamp, kind of do it we'll get into all the specifics of it.
Yeah.
From what I could see from the credits, primarily all by yourself. So I hit you up because I just thought it would be cool to get your perspective on it. Then I listened to it and I was like, God damn, this record is fucking awesome. We'll get into all that. I don't want to spill the beans on it too much because then we'll get going before I do everything else here. But kind of what I do in the show most of the time is we'll kind of get into where music became a big thing for you, where you kind of started writing your own music, and then we can kind of do a track by track if that's cool. Does that sound good for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I would love to do that.
Awesome. Before we do that, kind of as an icebreaker, what I like to do with people is kind of ask, what have you been listening to lately? Sort of your Spotify on repeat or the equivalent of. Kind of like if it's anything from the Beatles to a local band to an artist, whatever. Yeah. What are some musicians or artists, etc., that you've been listening to that you could kind of give a shout out to kind of start things off?
So yeah, I the way that I take in music is I can't need to excise the word consume from my vocabulary in terms of taking in media, but the way I listen to music is some people can listen to like a lot of variety. But if I find something that I like, I have to listen to it, over and over and over and over again until I get sick of it, which sometimes I never do. But occasionally I'll just find new stuff to get into. And this year has been a lot about, I was getting into Ethio jazz. Specifically, there's this one guy called Getachew Makuria, which I really like. And there's one album, which is a sort of a compilation album. I forget what it's called. It has a yellow cover on it, but I've been listening to that one a lot. Just, finding that through YouTube. So just listening to the song All Stay by Funkadelic a lot. I really like that song. It's got two very like standard chord progressions that are just strung together with guitar solo, but it just totally works because, just the feeling is there. It's committed to the, which is what I like about it. So gentle and beautiful and loving. Listening to a lot of Handsome Boy Modeling School. I'm a big Dan the Automator fan, love, Dr. Octagon and, the first Gorillaz LP. I like how he has that sort of nostalgic thing. I was a big Bela Bartok fan, and the fact that like Blue Flowers uses a Bartok sample, I'm like, yes, absolutely. And Handsome Boy Modeling School is great. Specifically, there's one song with, I think, Gangstar on it, and they're once again here to kick it for you. And there's just something about that song that I've been, listening to on a loop. So that's, it's old shit. I'm trying to think of like new shit that I've been listening to.
But you know what? Part of that though is fine because what I would say. I mean, I'm not trying to cut you off here. You could definitely shout out a newer artist. But your album you put out is Psychogeography is really cool to me because there's a lot of kind of that classic. You've got very intricate guitar, very intricate instrumentation throughout it. There's a little bit of like, I don't know if you listen to this so much, but like you've got a little bit of like this indie rock emo revival sound to your voice in some of the songs, while you've also got, it makes sense that you're kind of naming off some more of these like classic artists because like there's also that feel of it that, that kind of groove, the groove and the kind of back and forth between the harmonized lead guitars and the bass groove and the drum syncopation, along with like some very steady vocals that I think caters to that, and it's kind of got this like timeless feel to it. So of course that makes sense that from what you're talking about, that's sort of more of your kick you've been listening to. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me because obviously I think, the biggest influence evident in the album is Minutemen. I'm a huge Minutemen fan. you asked me to name my favorite album, easy, Double Nickels, no question.
Yeah.
It's the best one, no one ever made anything as good ever, and no one ever will. So there's a lot of that sort of like fragmented, blues-based guitar work. Steve Boone, he was great. He didn't know a ton of scales. He was mostly doing like blues or sort of like almost like Steely Danish influenced jazz scales a lot of the time. But, it's funny. What I liked about that is just even with that sort of like limited palette, he was able to do so much with it, which is obviously my playing is a bunch of like, get a bunch of weird chords down there and then just, pentatonic over it. Just don't think about it.
Yeah. But that's where some of the best blues or even classic rock or even more modern rock music, some of the biggest names you can name, like some of the most iconic riffs or leads or solos, they're all still based off of like the throwing in some triads,
it's the or scale,
it's
the one,
Yeah, you can't go wrong with going pentatonic and throwing in some cool jazzy chords and just letting it rip, right? Like that's
for sure. Yeah.
That's the way to go. Well, thanks for going over that. That'll give I've got a lot of I listen to a lot of the music that you named there, especially Minutemen.
Yeah,
that is like the Double Nickels album is like iconic for anyone that plays an instrument, in my view. Like that's so good.
Guitar, bass, or drums. It's like all of them are masters of their craft.
Yeah, and I think that'll be good for some of the listeners of this show because there's a lot of people that play music that I think, like if say like your project was doing a live show, they could play with you, but I don't know that they always listen to like the origins of that sound as much. So, it's a good encyclopedic knowledge in about, a minute and a half you just gave for people there that is good for them to go back and kind of get the origins of some of these sounds because it's such like all those artists are so formidable for like what's created. Like I said, even like emo revival, indie rock, all that kind of stuff today, like you wouldn't have that without a lot of the records you just named off. So thanks for going over that. To kind of go in on your end with music, again, I think a lot of people online or a lot of people that might hear this might know you from your House of Decline comics you do, your accounts, you've had a podcast that's done well. You've got your everything in between on that front. I don't know how many people, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't know how many people might know your music journey on these sides of things. So I think it would be really cool before we get into the album to kind of go back and talk about like when maybe music first got, became a big part of your life for you. It could have been, starting off as an avid listener, your first record that you found and it wasn't your parents or some older person that gave it to you. And then going into when you started writing or playing an instrument and things of that nature.
Theater kid. That's how music first got into me, as theater kid. But I like obviously you grow up, you start singing Disney. And I had some sort of, basic ability to sing, which was nice. I liked singing, I always liked performing. And I don't know what trying to think of like formative albums. I think when it really changed for me, and it's such a, almost like a cliched answer, but like fucking Sgt. Pepper's. Can you swear? You can say fuck.
Yes, you can.
Right?
Yeah, you can say fuck and stuff.
Hell yeah. No, honestly, it was fucking listening to. I remember where I was. I was on I was 14 years old. I was on a class trip to Italy, and because I was a shithead, I wasn't appreciating it. But as a teenager, you do. Sometimes you're like, I'm in my feelings. I'm so in my feelings. Maybe music. Well, I liked the Beatles before, actually. They were implanted in my head because as a kid, my parents put the Yellow Submarine movie in front of me. So, I just watched that over and over because it was a cartoon. You just watch a cartoon. So I had grown up with like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. But now I hear it in its original context. And what's more, I hear all this other stuff that's actually like built for a 14-year-old because it's this sort of, especially one who's like as whimsical and like into Kingdom Hearts as I am, right? Because it's like, you listen to Benefit of Mr. Kite or even I love Fixing a Hole. People say these are lesser Beatles songs. I love Fixing a Hole. I love She's Leaving Home. Yeah, it's treacly. Of course it is. But I have a very high tolerance for that. I love Paul solo albums,
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of, it's hard to say with a band as foundational and iconic as they are, but it's so weird to me that at this late stage there's still people that sort of have this nose up about certain songs from the Beatles where it's I don't know, man, I think it's pretty difficult to dissuade much of any of the
music creativity and songwriting that came from any of those guys. I know there's the joke about Ringo and stuff like that, some of the songs that he would bring to the table and all that, but it's like, I don't know that anyone, in all honesty, when you kind of take the snobbishness out of it, can like dissuade that any of those songs could be very influential and very iconic to especially like, let alone like a 14-year-old kid, like on a trip and all this kind of stuff, just listening to it, like you said, being in your feelings, looking out the window, pretending it's a music video or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you get to Day in the Life, which, no, everyone agrees, Matt, holy shit, And that your first time hearing that, I was like, oh, you can just do what you want with music. You can just do whatever you want. But the fact that it incorporated stuff like, dude, through that, through the Beatles, there was like a window to like fucking Stockhausen and shit like that. Like that, they were directly influenced by stuff like that. So, that's why, I love them to death still, and to this day, an often denigrated Beatles song off of an often denigrated album, Yellow Submarine, the soundtrack album, Only a Northern Song. That is my favorite Beatles song. I'm going to, level Only a Northern Song. It's so good. It is such a weird.
It's a hot take, but I'll take it. I will take it. That's good. That's good.
Weird, but it introduced me to sound collage. It introduced me to free in like a way that was more accessible than Revolution 9, because it still has that, funny, like, has that section where it goes from like a B chord to like an F sharp to a B chord in this sort of like, I don't know. It's like, even the lesser songs that George Harrison was crapping at, the lesser songs were like, they had these great little like, because they incorporated all these like little Baroque passages into their music, whether they knew it or not, whether they gleaned that type of writing off of George Martin, or whether that's just like, something that was in like the British classical music style or whatever. They had these great, for whatever else, the Beatles were very good at harmonic songwriting arrangement. I don't think you can deny that.
Yeah, I think, this is such a cliche to say, but I think like, even to the extent that you're talking about, sort of like the, again, big air quotes for people listening on the audio level, just on the audio sense of things, like lesser songs, like they were still doing things that no one else had been doing before. Like I just, you know what I mean? Like I think about like even some of the like tuning ideas they would have, or some of the distortion, textures they would throw on, or all these different things that like nowadays somebody play it, like me, who plays primarily like heavier music, would be like, oh, whatever, you throw on distortion and let it rip or whatever. But it's like, no, there's certain songs you can hear from the Beatles and you're like, oh, that's where like sort of a breakdown came from. That's sort of like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like because I was sort of, when I was younger, I was like really in to like, really heavy extreme metal stuff or punk or whatever. And so like in those groups, people would kind of be like a hipster about the Beatles sometimes. And so as an adult, you would go back and listen to some of it. And again, it's not like the Beatles aren't like a band that I'm like going to daily in my personal like intake. But whenever I go back and check out whatever record, doesn't matter, you're like, oh my God, I hear this in like 2024 modern metal music with just a slightly different tweak and probably tuned down lower, and then there it is, so yeah, nothing to say but like completely iconic, which of course that's the first time anyone's ever said that, obviously.
Oh no, who's I'll never shut up about the fucking Beatles. You'll never get me to stop talking about how much I love the goddamn Beatles. But yeah, it started from there, but then there was this rapid. What was interesting is because of the internet, and it's interesting when I talk to like Zoomers, like 20-somethings nowadays, who've had access, their music taste is like so much more eclectic than I could even. I thought my music taste as a teenager was eclectic, but they've had access to like YouTube and all these resources, and all the all these like scrabbling resources to find material in ways that. What I did was I went to early internet music critics. That's how I found music or discovered what to listen to. Because inevitably, okay, where do I begin? Best albums, right? You type in. And so I got linked to something called Digital Dream Door. I remember that was the first website. DigitalDreamDoor.com was an early, I don't know if it's still up, but they had like top 100 lists of like best albums, best bases. It's like, okay, I'll start here. And they had some really good recommendations, actually. And to this day, their recommendation for number one psychedelic album of all time, which is a very left field pick, but they chose The United States of America by United States of America, a 1968 weird experimental guitarless sort of synthy album. And it's great, It's, very much, I don't know, have you gone through all the nuggets? Did you listen to all of the nuggets ever? Just go through, fuck it, I'm listening to all the nuggets. Do you ever do that?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
You know, that compilation of like lost, like stuff like Count 5 and Moby Grape.
No, I'm not even. I wasn't even aware of. This is where it shows I'm a total hack. But
no, it's
but
not a total Nuggets. It's like a relatively famous compilation of like 60s garage rock psychedelic music.
Well, I'm gonna save it right now so I check it out.
It's great. I mean, but like a lot of the songs are like, I had too much to dream. I think there's a literal song called I Had Too Much to Dream Last Night. I was like, we had a trip out, man. We're having like a freak out. And the song's all about it. Like, classic like white people in the 60s, talking about like freaking out. I say white people. I'm a white person. But,
like, we can hate on ourselves a little bit. It's fine.
Sure. But to talk with like authority, it's stupid. Either way.
Yeah.
But but there was that stuff. And that got me into experimental music. And so there was also this need to like, because when you're young, and you're not really good at anything, you differentiate yourself through taste. That's how I'm going to have better taste than people. That's how I'm going to be an individual, right? So it became very important to me to curate a musical taste that signified that I was different. Almost through pure contrarianism, I developed what I would consider a good musical taste. Through pure contrarianism, I started listening to Captain Beefheart, which was like my window into weirder music. Through pure contrarianism, I listened to Sun Ra. It turned out it was good. That's the funny thing. It's like sometimes you say, well, I'll just do the opposite. Everyone's like, it was also funny because at the time there was like this classic rock revival because of like, remember stuff like Wolfmother for some reason?
Yeah.
And because of like Guitar Hero too. But there was this like, suddenly there was this brief classic rock revival in the mid 2000s. So everyone was into Zeppelin. And I was like, I'm into like the harder shit, like Zappa, like, which is not hard shit, it's not.
But that is like music. I feel like as long as you later on don't become like a gatekeeper or overly snobbish, like as a full-fledged adult, right? Like being a contrarian with music when you're a kid or when you're, adolescent or, early adulthood, all that can end up being a little bit good when it comes to finding music that like, I don't know, like I said, for me, like I can identify with that because like when I was, quitting high school in 2010, I remember like trying to find the metal bands that were weird that nobody else could find that you would like locate on MySpace or like dig in the old forums that don't exist anymore to try to find like the best album that no one's ever heard of. And you would end up finding things that like changed how I wrote music or finding a new tuning that I had never heard of before or all these different things. So we're like, it's one of the few, like politics, which you cover often in other things, when people become solely contrarian, it's like the biggest cesspool on the planet. Like with art, at times, once you eventually grow out of it, it ends up bringing you a little bit more niche things that can really like develop your tastes and open your eyes to things you've never even fathomed before. So thank you for giving a great example on how contrarianism is good. That's I guess what we'll say.
It's funny because it's like, it's how I became a communist too. Like I was a contrarian. Like I was a communist in high school just because I knew it pissed like people off when you said that. Because people are like instinctually married to capitalism. You're like, I don't know, labor, fucking
labor, dude.
Fucking means of production, whatever. Just saying shit to trigger them. But then it turns out it's correct. Which is funny. It's funny to like adopt a position just to piss people off, but then it turns out it's the right one.
Hey, I mean, I was gonna say that's where like a lot of the coming up in like music scenes. That's where like a lot of the anarchist kids came from, like where I was from, right? It was just making sure you could piss off everybody in the school and the teachers and that kind of angst, and then. Lo and behold, a lot of people end up developing better to believe politics.
It. You just end up, it's like
you start reading books,
When it becomes rebellious to care and to know things, it becomes which is
whatever works, right?
That's that's to blowing smoke up our own asses. I don't.
Whatever.
I don't read freaking theory, except for like 3 books.
I can't pretend that I understand any of it, but that's whatever. But to go from there though, obviously all these things can really develop kind of what you're into, and I can hear already like a little bit of those influences even come through in your album you recently put out. When did it come to, because I mean, again, to kind of talk about like in a general sense, psychogeography overall, like the every single instrument you're doing in this is extremely well done.
The drums are samples. I want to get that right off the bat. The drums are freaking garage band samples. It's like,
and it works though. It works. And that's also something a lot of like solo artists do, because not too many people have space in their apartment or their townhome or wherever they're maybe living or whatever, let alone your neighborhood where you're allowed to even play live drums a lot of the time, let alone learn them. But I mean, still, the grooves in it and everything in between and the production, like, you're very well versed. This is not just somebody sitting down writing some really great simple songs on an acoustic guitar and putting out like a singer-songwriter album or like a chord-based rock album. You're going for it on these songs, like quite a bit.
Thank you. Yeah.
So where does that come from for you? Where do you kind of pick up guitar to this level? Where's that kind of come from for you? And if there was anything else,
the answer is
to
funny.
That degree.
It's dysphoria. It was straight up gendered, because I was like, I always played guitar from when I was 15, but like never made any attempt to like get good. And at the point in my 30s when everything like started dawning on me, and I was like looking at a lot of women online, as you do, and thinking, I'll never get there. I'll never be like her, and having those thoughts. For some reason, I was able to trick my brain into be like, okay, every time you feel this, just practice scales. Just start practicing scales. And it worked, and I mean, that was always my thing. I had always wanted to like play guitar, and I don't think, I'm not, crazy, I'm barely using my pinky, I can't do like super advanced stuff. It's mostly like rapid pentatonic, very Django Reinhardt inspired, because he only played with two fingers, right? So, cribbing a lot of that technique to like do sort of impressive sounding stuff, but, slightly easier than, say, like, I'm no Marty Friedman, or like, I couldn't do like Poison Was the Cure. I couldn't do that riff without like significant time investment, but you learn some tricks, you learn how to twang, you learn how to play gesturally like Frank Zappa, and you can go a lot of places like that. And so that was it. It was just like practicing pentatonic scales as a way to deal with emotional pain.
Yeah.
And,
which, as much as like, obviously, including myself, a lot of musicians haven't dealt with gender dysphoria or anything the way that you have, but I think a lot of people could relate to the overarching like general theme of finding, using music, whether in a positive way, negative way, whatever, as an escape for like a lot of different things, or a coping mechanism for us in a lot of different circumstances. I think that's a pretty universal thing that you can definitely feel, and it can become an obsession in that way, in some ways.
Yeah.
Like I'm just, speaking from my own experience, but to kind of go from that. So you said like you've done some kind of projects that never really got off in the past and things of that nature. You put out this record on Halloween, I think, right? Is when you put out the full record. Overarchingly, I guess, because, when I do a track by track, a lot of times people end up getting into the lyrics more than anything else, because it's the easiest thing to kind of separate with songs and all that kind of stuff. What was the, did you also like, did you mix this yourself? Did you send it off to somebody else?
I mixed it myself. I mixed it myself.
So
you like the mixing?
Yeah, I think it sounds great. I think it sounds
Thank
fantastic.
You. That's great. I'm always so nervous about that, because I don't know what's good,
Well, neither do I, and I've been spending the last 32 years trying to figure it out, and I'm still tweaking things and trying to find a way to make myself happy with it.
Right way. How do compressors work? Oh my god.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But but I guess when it comes to the record overall, like when it comes to the songwriting in general, like what was the process like for you on this? Is there anything you can speak to specifically on the instrumentation angle, like overarchingly, and then we can kind of get into the track by track?
It was just the idea of, I wanted to get something out, very inspired by also one of my favorite albums ever is Meat Puppets 2, And they often talk about how they just like jammed that album out, and it's sort of like they're skilled, but it's great in the solos. You can hear them fuck up, you can hear them make mistakes, but those become part of the solos, and they become part of the magic of that sort of imperfection. So that was sort of like also like a big desire to do. It was sort of like squaring stuff with myself, like what do I really want to hear more than anything else? I know it's stupid, but I really like harmonized, like Molly Hatchet style guitars, where they're just going, and they're, just going together, and something about those ringing. And you know who it also was? Marnie Stern. Marnie Stern?
Yes.
She's a great guitarist, and she had that finger tapping thing, but she used finger tapping in order to create this big sparkly texture and shit like that, which I'm very, inspired by. And so I think that was that. It's also just, sort of a reaction to a lot of great music is coming out today. Tons of great music is coming out today that is very shoegazy. Like that seems to be the atmosphere too. Like ambient, the emphasis is not on like rapidity or, very like, except for some other stuff. There's some stuff where like the melody is very rapid, like this maximalist hyperpop stuff. A lot of the time, especially you hear like the Deftones revival amongst the kids, like stuff like Alex G, that sort of like washed,
Yeah.
which was Miserlou, right? That's like one of the first songs I heard that made me want to play guitar. So the first thing I learned was first thing I learned was picking, like that. And so, just something about it, hybrid picking, like I can't do that. I can't do that stuff. I want to learn how to do good hybrid picking eventually, but rapid bluegrass picking. I always pointed there's this,
Sorry, I was going to say underrated talent, like bluegrass picking. Like it's something a lot of modern people do not appreciate, how fucking insane you have to be to play some of those songs. It's truly incredible,
Love it so much. Anything is a and it was probably cartoons that got me into it. Because another cartoon that I watched when I was way too young was The Tune by Bill Plimpton. Because it was a cartoon. I would just watch it over and over again. And it had like a very strong like bluegrass and country element to its soundtrack, which I just took in as a kid. So it's like, I don't know. So you never know what gets into you, when you're young, because you're watching it through a weird cartoon. But also there became like, I don't know, this, there was this thing with a lot of trans music is very electronic and, very centered around the escape from the meat prison of the body through electronic stuff. And that's good stuff. I like that. But for me, I always liked, how much more meat prison can we get? How much more, which is like through organic sound or through jazz or through stuff where you have more of a, and obviously, this doesn't apply to all electronic. There's glitch music, there's aleatoric electronic music, there is an exception to this. But I always like, for lack of a better term, analog or organic. Organic, analog's a better music, but because there is more of that, there's more meat at play, frankly, There feels to me like, at least, and I've tried laptop performance before. I've tried Ableton performance before. And it's fun, but there's just something about a string cutting into your finger that is like much more satisfying to me than pressing a key on like a controller or like a laptop. There's something about it which feels like real interface of meat and machine in a way that, an actual like resonating substance, which is why I love guitar and want like heavy guitar-based music to make like a strong triumphant return.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a cool way to put it, and I hear you on that. I think there's something to like, and again, I want to preface this the same way you did. Nothing wrong with all the.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like to your record, to get into the record on a track by track basis here, like I think there is something to that is really cool to hear from someone putting out a record on Bandcamp, doing it all themselves. That really has that feel. Like I said earlier, I think timeless is a good word to use for your album, because like
No, thank you.
you could hear it in the 80s in a lot of instances, in a lot of ways, with some of the artists you're naming off, and it wouldn't be overly out of place. You could hear it in 2024, and there's like, like I said, I can hear more from your voice, I think, than maybe the instrumentation. A lot of like the indie rock and emo revival stuff that and there's a big like there's a big trans and queer community enveloped in that as well. I've had a lot of great artists on. Cat and the Hurricane and Line are two bands out of Madison, Wisconsin that I just had on recently. That fantastic indie rock, indie pop artists that are in that vein as well. But like the way I was just like so pleasantly and like welcomed, surprised in a good way of how much this record like seems to pull from, and it makes a lot of sense, from like that kind of 80s 70s vibe, while still like feeling like it could be attached to like the indie rock scene in some ways. I thought it was really cool. And so it makes a lot of sense from your background on that. Let's go ahead and dive into this here. We've got 10 tracks. Each one kind of ranges from around 3 minutes to I think your longest one is like teetering on 5 minutes. It's like 4 minutes and 50 seconds on here. So pretty classic, rock song lengths.
Meat and potatoes. We're not trying anything fancy. We're not Jordy Greep here. We're just, it's like
not doing your.
I'm a big Greep fan. He's a good guy.
Not throwing in some 12-minute long prog songs.
Yeah, we need some Crystal Ships going on. We need some. Yeah, we need some Starship Troopers going on. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But each song, I think, like sort of has a very cool aesthetic to it. But what I want to do, because like you've kind of talked about the instrumentation pretty well. Your lyrics in this seem very, very pointed and very, very well thought out in these songs. Like it seems like you're definitely delivering a lot of substance in them, and some of them I can tell are made in an artistic way to be open to interpretation. Some of the other ones I can kind of more see what the deliberate lyrical content is. So I guess I would just want to break these down from your perspective, and also feel free to talk about the songwriting and everything in between. I don't mean to just talk about the lyrics, but let's go ahead and just break this down, starting with the first track, Brutalize My Body, again, off of Psychogeography. Tell me what this song's about lyrically, and you can also speak to anything else specific to the song.
Well, I think a lot of this album, you could interpret it as being a sub for the man, you could be as, or, so it's called Psychogeography, and the project is called Anti-Spectacular, because those are both Debordian concepts. French fella, went by the name of Guy Debord, Marxist. He, I haven't read that much theory. I've read one book by Guy Debord that nonetheless inspired me, because it sort of like articulated what the whole freaking problem is, right? Why it's difficult to sort of get out of this tenuous situation of, inactive comfort at the imperial core, because we live in the society of the spectacle. Whatever criticism we make of the status quo becomes entertainment and put up on the big screen, and then you become mollified and you don't do anything because you've already sort of watched it happening. And thus, there becomes this sort of subduing aspect to it. We're all just watching the screen of our own criticisms, and thus we're not committing to any sort of action. And so he identifies this sort of, and it's funny because like, as someone who's made my bones as a cartoonist, as an entertainer, it's like he's roasting me on especially like podcasts, especially if you do like a nominally leftist podcast where he's talking about, a lot of stuff about how theory is entertainment, is part of the problem. You're like, yeah, roast me, Guy Debord. So, but then that becomes the question: how do you make art that is anti-spectacle? How do you make art that, gets people to, get up out of stuff, And I think that's a hard question. I think it's like, I don't think you can deliberately do it. It's hard to, deliberately come to a way of doing it. But there's the hope that you can do it, that you can create something sort of poignant that, if not wakes people up in like the Rage Against the Machine sense of the word, maybe makes people a little more aware of their surroundings in that John Cage 433 sense. Suddenly you become vastly more aware of space because you there's less. I mean, it's why it's inspired by the Minutemen and We Jam Econo. And if I did ever take this live, I would probably try and keep the spectacle down as much as possible, just keep it to the instruments in order to make people aware of the space a little more. And that is hinted in Psychogeography as well, another Debordian concept, which I, related to a lot. The idea that spaces, like actual cordoned off areas of land, have this embedded memory within them. And there's sort of this, residue, this psychological residue to be found in space, which I found, very, very, very relatable for the trans experience, for sure. Because it's not just the trans experience, but anytime you get older and you've walked across like a patch of land that you've been before as a young person, and think about how much you've changed since then, or how the context of your life has changed since then. And it's very powerful. You think about the after image of your young self and you interacting with that. Or, you think about your young self maybe seeing the image of your old self, which, as a trans person, can be very drastic.
Right.
So, and you'll see on the cover, I wasn't subtle about it. It's got the pink and blue. It's got, it's about a little bit about this, as, all things are. So brutalize my body that's a long-winded way of saying that. So I am a canvas for your work. It's very subby. It's let's get right. It's very subby. It's like, tear into me, like, but that I think there is that sort of in embracing femininity, or at least a version of femininity that I wanted. Lord knows that this isn't associated with all of femininity, but the idea of being, used and exploited and like, shying away from that idea, obviously, because it's anti-feminist or whatever, but then also like reveling in it as well in a way that you couldn't before when you were a man and you were embarrassed by that sort of thing. But now there's this almost sort of energetic revelation in being able to be like, yeah. And so, you'll get again to that revelation at the end of the album as well, but in a different context as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think this one was like a little, obviously, like I think the song has the least amount of lyrics in the whole album, and which is a good start for like an intro track, like a good starter track for everybody, right? And the melody of it, like from a songwriting perspective, I really, really enjoyed. When I saw how few lines there were when I was first listening to it, I was like, how is this going to be the whole 3-minute long song? And it made a lot of sense with like the very like kind of I don't want to say soaring, because it's not like you're belting your lungs out or anything on the song, but like this very like angelic kind of sound on it. It feels very like I don't know, it fits really well with the overall concept and the
they're coming for me. They don't like it.
But like that makes a lot of sense from what you're saying on it. I just want to say one quick thing to the overarching concept you're talking about with spectacle and talking about podcasts and kind of like, I don't know, I always have this kind of like, especially doing a podcast, I know I talk music here primarily, but like this overarching like dichotomy between wanting to find a way to speak to people and yet it all becoming sort of this like politics for the sake of consumption, which is I think one of the worst things about the United States in a lot of ways. And what I thought was interesting when you brought that up, and I just wanted to say this before I forgot, is one of your comics you put out recently that I noticed, like even on Blue Sky, you have like, I don't know, 13,000+ likes on it or whatever, was the one pertaining to the the United Health CEO.
Luigi. Maybe. I don't want to make any I don't even want to say he's the assassin, because this has my whole like, if you're conspiracy brained at all, this has you going. So it's like, but the guy that they got, I found that like I looked at this a few times today because I thought it was so interesting when you especially your explanation in it. But I mean, it kind of pertains a little bit to what you're talking about with the album in a little bit, in a way of like the first thing I saw right after the names, and admittedly like a song's coming out for my own project that's going to maybe have this as the title, so I'm part of the problem as well. But the 3 words that were written on the bullets that were supposedly used and all this kind of stuff. Instantly I saw like the anti-fascist shops all have that on of course,
shirts, and the whole 9 yards. And it's like, I do understand where like a normie person or a right-wing person would see that and be like, what is this? Like, what is happening here? And it does kind of come off as like cheapening what happened and the overall construct of it. So when you said that, I was like, I have to bring this up just because I thought it was a perfect encapsulation of what you're talking about in your own comic you made. I don't know, like there's a lot to that, but yeah, no, I mean, going back to the album, I love the song's great. It's a great starter track. It was one that like instantly pulled me in with the guitar work and things of that nature on the song, and kind of sets the tone for the rest of the record. Going into the next one, Sin of Sloth. Go ahead and same deal. Speak to the lyrics. Anything else you have to say about the concept on this one?
I mean, that's very, the theme of the album is pretty apparent on that, because what are the lyrics to that one?
I can read them off for you if you want. It says, hollow trees in a dead forest, hiding in their ashen province, wallow uninvited tourist, riding where it claims the sovereign, and you ignore the little devil flying like a moth, lazy wings for the sin of sloth. And no amount of doing nothing takes the sin away, and it grows so much larger each day. Gesture towards the unfamiliar, heartache comfort that consoles you, fester in the old peculiar, partake in the blood that holds you. So that's all the lyrics of the song. But kind of speak to, like, I mean, I can obviously interpret those things, but I'm also a big dumbass. So kind of spell out.
I mean, that's like the most explicit, like the overall theme of inaction gets on that album. Like, for some reason, you can't motivate yourself to do something substantial. And, we're talking about a joke that people were making about the United Health shooters. Like, yeah, of course he's not a leftist. He actually did something,
Yeah. You mean he didn't do a communist book club or whatever?
Yeah, precisely. He didn't do some sort of form of, like, social, like, community, so, like, friend group consolidation, but, but leftistly. But I think there is something to that where it's like there is some degree of inescapable comfort that you live with. You watch sort of an Adam Curtis documentary, that sort of thing. It's like, ooh, I'm hyper-normalized. I can't get out of the superstructure. I'll buy Amazon anyway, like, whatever, I'll go to Starbucks. I'll buy the genocide coffee. I know it's genocide coffee, but I'm self-aware, so it's fine. I think, living with that, the fact that a lot of the fact that you're just committed to this capitalist superstructure does come down to, like, laziness. And I don't want to say, this sounds like DoorDash discourse, which I don't want to start, but it's like, you probably could, like, live without a lot of stuff that you're currently, I know I could, but I don't, because I like it. But, and for some reason, even that, you do that too. It's like, it's okay to, like, indulge in this, luxury, which we know comes at the expense of, like, the global south. Just there's this nightmarish supply chain for cobalt alone. Like, how can we justify living? And we do, because it's like lazy wings. You get your lazy wings, and that's what the album is about. That sort of entertainment, once again, the enduring power of entertainment that I am contributing to, ironically, with this album. It's funny to make a song about how you're lazy, that basically just by listening to it, you embark on that laziness as well.
We're all anyone that's, like, aware and on any sort of, like, real left side of things, like, has to be aware that you're a walking contradiction most of your day-to-day life, right? Like, that's like the reality of it, and it doesn't mean it's actually okay, right? Like, that's the kind of conundrum I think I find myself in whenever I think about things for more than 5 seconds of my day-to-day life as well. So again, that is, like, an extremely relatable song and that concept, and unfortunately, like, it's relatable and it's, like, unsettling, but it should be, but yet, like, you'll listen to it and, like you said, somebody will go buy their genocide coffee or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
But again, and again, I want to just preface that with fantastic song. Really, I'm going to get to which one I thought was, like, maybe my favorite instrumentally later, but like, every single one of these songs, I'm like, oh no, that's my favorite riff. That's my little favorite syncopated fill you've got. Oh no, that's the coolest groove. And then it's like each one keeps going and you find different things that you enjoy about it that are in that vein. Yeah. So it's the instrumentation is just, like, off the charts as well.
Thank you.
With the lyrics and everything in between. Yeah.
That was a real goal for this album, was to make it, like, really riff dense. I mean, that's a feature of the, like, the shoegazy music. It makes you interested in the music with texture, not with polyphonic interacting melody. It's more about timbre and texture and the way things sound, which is good. I keep saying that. I say that too effusively. But for me, like, the way that I got my rocks off, the way that I got my jollies was polyphony, like melodic lines, intersecting, Bach, counterpoint, Stephen Sondheim, things of this nature. So, and that's what, Minutemen were so good. They just had the intersecting lines between Mike Watt and D. Boon all the time. When Mike Watt went up, D. Boon went down. And so you had these great, great little melodies that played off of each other. I love it when, Michael Jackson, right? But when every instrument is playing a catchy riff, as it is in Beat It, where every line is just instantly memorable. To me, that is like the holy grail of pop or rock music construction.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's when like every little thing you could kind of solo it and it would bring your attention. You notice the kind of skill of the player and things of that nature, and yet it all comes together and it's a cohesive piece. There's nothing like overarching or nothing clashing as well. Yeah. Which is just a lot of detailed songwriting. Yeah, Superstition by Stevie Wonder is like the perfect example of like, there's 12 lines. Each of them is the catchiest melody you've ever heard being played expertly by Stevie Wonder himself or some guy they got, some Motown genius. So. Yeah, 100%. Go to the next one. There won't be an answer. Just kind of speak to this one. I keep asking the same question, the drill, lyrics, overarching theme, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, I guess I have to preface this with some emotional well-being. At the beginning of the month of October, somebody very close to me passed away. And as it does with a lot of people, I got very, very depressed and I got very isolated, which is actually why I recorded this album in 20 days as a result of this isolation. And as a result of this death, putting my life in a lot of context. I just transitioned very publicly. And, I'm still living in Toronto, the same city I lived in as a kid. And, this man who I dated for 5 years, and who formed a very large portion of my life, now he's gone. And so there was that, deliberate need to hash things. I remember watching this old Outcast documentary on VH1 or something like that. And anytime like some horrible tragedy would happen to them, their first response is like, got to get back in the studio. It's like Andre 3000's mom dies, got to get back in the studio. But there is, not just as a coping mechanism, but suddenly music is diarizing. Suddenly I had all of these thoughts that I needed to journal out. And the way that I journal is poetic. So it's like revealing, but not so revealing as to be, doxing myself or anything like that. But, and when someone dies, you think a lot about death, of course, and you think a lot about your own desire for the afterlife and what you want. Of course, even if you don't believe in prayer, you hopelessly pray to the spirit of this person. That's what it's about. It's like you can, and which it might be an unpopular, and some people believe their prayers will be answered, but like, I like it because, I have these, and you'll hear a lot of religious themes, like you'll have me talk about Jesus, I call it the benign tumor pressing on the religion lobe of my brain. I got that thing, I'm not actually into it, but I like all that imagery because it's spooky and fun. And, it feels as if there's a grand narrative to the universe when really, if I actually got to the root of what I believe, I think it's just a passage into nothingness. You ask yourself, oh, what would he have wanted? Who cares? Doesn't matter. And so that song is about reveling in that, beautiful hopelessness. Yeah, the last verse or the last lyrics of this song, like it really spelled that out for me. And, the line, like, I think you just kind of said it, the forever is just a useless fiction. Like I recently, not a partner, but I recently had like a significant, family member pass away, as well. And these kinds of things are like extremely universal for people. And I think it's always interesting, cause like you said, you could talk about a ton of artists where maybe some of their most heartfelt or most, your favorite song that you connect to or whatever kind of come from this place of loss. But everybody has like a very different perspective on what that looks like. It impacts everybody differently. Obviously the circumstances are so individualistic and things of that nature. But some of these lyrics I think are like very haunting in this song, I think. And I think it delivers what you're, I hope that's a compliment, right? Like
that is a compliment. I was trying to go for spooky Sheryl Crow with this song. So that's,
I think you nailed it.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing what the song's about there. And again, unfortunately, like a very, very relatable song for a lot of people. And again, like just a tough kind of human experience to go through, but but a beautiful song. Absolutely enjoy it. Absolutely love it. Getting to these next two songs, both Ghostlight and Skeleton, or at least the ones on your Bandcamp comments that I sleuth through, as well as like what I could see online, that people were repeatedly saying were their favorites when they checked out the record, which I could get. They're awesome. Especially, I think it was Ghostlight. I thought like instrumentally was one of the strongest ones on the record.
Thank you.
Also, the one that I think you have the most lyrics on as well, but kind of speak to Ghostlight inspirations and all that good stuff.
So yeah, following the theme of like, talking about anti-spectacular, it's also this sort of like anti-spirituality, or because I have the religion lobe, I have the benign tumor on the religion lobe, I need to take these constant, exercises or meditations to demystify the world for myself in order to, okay, this is just a coincidence. There isn't any sort of interaction between stuff. There's no, there's no spirit moving stuff. Because the more I believe in magic, the more I go weird, So it's like, in order to ground myself, I have to constantly ply myself against this instinct. But this song envisions, what if I didn't? Like Owen Wilson and Royal. What if I didn't? Owen Wilson and Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of like seeing this sort of wispy, gaseous like spirit out by an abandoned gas station and then deciding to take care of it, and that's sort of the thing behind that song is like going to some place where ain't no person should ever go to and finding some creature no one should have ever seen before and suddenly feeling a compulsive need to nurture that, much
you do for someone solely from the Toronto area. You do way too good of a drawl. Like,
yeah. Well, no, this is like, I love doing that. If it were socially acceptable, I find it much easier to organize my thoughts when I talk like this. I don't know why.
I love
it's because of the pauses. You're expected to like pause at strategic places, which allows me to gather my thoughts. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
This one is cool. I love that kind of concept there, that it's sort of like a story, right? Like it's like this sort of narrative, like you just kind of described. And I don't know, it's an interesting one as far as like the lyrics go. It kind of has like a more unique, unique voice on it, I guess, than maybe like the not to say the first three didn't, but it's like kind of like this, the specificity of it is like unique to the record, I think, in a really cool way.
I'm doing my little Eartha Kitt mule at the beginning. Look at it in there. That sort of like deeper, deeper sort of femme affected voice at the beginning there, which gives it a distinct quality. I like it. I like how I'm sounding there.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
Not to toot I guess you should. No, you can say things. You can say you like your own. It's fine.
Yeah, you should enjoy your own art that you painstakingly spend tons of time on. I think it's fine. To go to Skeleton, this is the one that I thought like was interesting, like vocally, if I remember right. And again, like I listen to things 99% of the time on my long commutes in the car, so I'm not like looking at my phone. But this is the one that you have like sort of a lot of like, I know it's all you, unless you say you, but that kind of like group voice that you can kind of think of like Fleetwood Mac,
who I'm biting that from? I'm biting that from D'Angelo. That's my major inspiration from that is Black Messiah. I was actually listening to that record freaking today. What a record. Oh my God. Just those thick, dense, and it's all him too. So you get that like condensed thing that goes on when it's all the same voice with like a very large vocal range. I mean, that's, part of this trans album is like, it's also a big vocal training exercise, right? It's one of the most useful things for vocal training is singing.
But it's nice because I have the facility. I have a very wide vocal range. I can go down here if I want. That's what's, it's funny. This is where my natural, this is where I shouldn't say natural, but this is the boy voice that I was using for years and years and years.
And, eventually you go back up here. But it's great. I still like that. I still like retaining that and being able to call on that, especially for music, because you can get the whole range of choir in there, not to tout my range, but as a result of vocal training, like I improved my octave range, now I've got like an Axl Rose style.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, this album, like the first listen through I had to do a double take to check like that you had put down that you did all the vocals, guitars, etc. Because I was like, there's so many, like there's such a large range
Yeah.
of voices on this that it makes a lot of sense. Like it's something that like somebody like I don't think of like that voice training would then again affect your, you know, your range like singing wise. Like that's kind of a cool thing in this record that's really showcased. I think that's awesome.
No, you can do it. Well, I got inspired because I went to there was, on British Drag Race. I saw this, watched the first season of UK Drag Race, and one of the queens, Davina De Campo, taught herself whistle register, and which is like Mariah Carey style whistle register. And they asked her about it. I was like, "How did you do that?" "I don't know, girl. I locked myself in a room, and I just learned how to do it for a year." And I figured that's basically how you do it. Is you learn to tighten up your larynx, you learn to tighten up your trachea, and that's the basic mechanism. But it also allows you to sing much higher.
Yeah,
so that's nice.
Yeah, this is showing me like that I have no excuse for like increasing my range in the singing that I do in my own songs. I gotta work on some of these things. That's awesome.
It's hard. It's tough.
Yeah, no, I know. I do not have the what am I looking for? The fortitude for that. So kudos to you again for this. You really like, especially on that. I think like a few of the songs, you really show your range overall dynamically with more of a singular voice from one part to the other. This one, it's just like a choir of you in a really cool way.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
That's Ain't That Easy by D'Angelo. That's absolutely probably the big inspiration behind that.
Yeah, 100%. Going to track 6, I Like a Pigeon. Same questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell me what this one's about.
Country music. Well, this one is the most nakedly psychogeographic of all the songs, because especially that, like, it's also just like, what if we wrote a country song about the city? Wouldn't that be funny? It's like city country, So, I think there was an embracer of that, also because I like a lot of like sonic and emotional variety. This album is very much inspired by also one of my favorite artists, Ween, specifically the album Quebec, which is them, dealing with like real in your 30s adult problems, but still being, goofy and eclectic. Yeah. So, and they would often lapse into country music as well, which is what and, part and parcel of the, let's do like really hardcore pentatonic shit. You got to do a country song if you're doing.
Right.
So there's a lot of that on this song, very much inspired by like also Allman or Skinner or, as I mentioned before, Molly Hatchet, love Molly Hatchet. So, but also, I guess so you'll hear a lot of that like sort of interacting, like sparkly pentatonic stuff. I think an influence that I'm really underestimating with that is I love, classical French impressionist composers like Debussy and Ravel and stuff like that. And their bread and butter was like, one time Debussy went to like the World's Fair and he heard gamelan music. And it was all of this sort of dense interacting pentatonic stuff. And he was like, ooh, this is magnifique. I will use this to convey la mer, the ocean. Yeah. Is this very well? And yeah. So I think there's a lot of that too. And weirdly, that stuff, that sort of like dense interacting, like major pentatonic lines features a lot in this song. But yeah, it's also like another trance. I feel like a pigeon. I'm filthy, but I fly. Ooh, you say I'm dirty. You say I'm dirty for being a queer. I got wings, bitch. I got goddamn wings. I'm a goddamn pigeon. You're on the ground.
No, I love that. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. I love that sort of imagery in a way that like it sort of like turns things on its head, like within just like a couple of lines to start the song, like how you're describing yourself. I think that's like kind of, I don't know, it's cool, like lyrically how you kind of spun it, just like as like prose, like framing like poetry kind of stance. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, you see that a lot with queer people. Oh, you call me trash? Well, what if trash was like glam? What if trash was, what if trash was like the thing,
Yeah, and it's like, and then at the end of the day, anybody say it's like, go fuck yourself, right? Like that's sort of the end point, right? Like, no, again, like I know I'm a broken record here, but really, really cool song. Again, like the kind of, this one felt like kind of having that country aesthetic a little more, and definitely that timbre in it, which was cool.
Yeah.
Going to Dead in Your Arms.
Yeah.
Same deal. Just speak to this one for me.
This is like another, like, brutalize my body, let me sacrifice myself, let me like tear my arm off to, there's something about that. It's funny. That's like often like the thing that gets ascribed to the masculine instinct is like, well, whatever else, I get to be the protector, women and children first. But there's that thing with men where they feel that sense of nobility by putting their meat, their body, that sense of masculinity, as that protector, between harm's way of them and, that to be protected, the beautiful, fragile, feminine, right? But, what if you turn that on its ear? What if now instead this feminine entity resembles that protector? What if this feminine entity takes a bunch of hours? And, it's all very Saint Sebastian, isn't it? It's all very like Catholic torture, it's all very, something like that. Let me get beat up for you, So, like, there is that sort of subby instinct with that. But also, like, I think there is that thing with death, like, that almost romantic desire, that almost Romeo and Juliet-ish thing, where you only really understand a person's meaning to you if you can't have them anymore. And to incur that sort of devastation within someone else, is this intense romance you can't feel, which is, because you're dead, which is why... that's a subject of fixation in terms of that. It comes in skeleton to stuff from beyond the grave, They can't actually curse you, but the memory curses, just the suggestion of it curses you.
Yeah, 100%. And I thought something you talked about a little bit earlier about because I have this, I forget the specific, like, sort of, you were saying, was it the benign religion tumor, I think.
The benign tumor on the religion lobe, yeah.
Yeah. This song, like you said earlier, like this song, like not that it's really talking about anything like that per se, but like it sort of has that like some of the lyrics you can feel sort of the same imagery in a way from like those really kind of depressing, but like those dark, but they didn't call them dark in church, like hymns you would read with some of the, like, I don't know if you grew up in a religious environment like I did at all, but like,
my mom's Jewish, my dad's Catholic. The Catholic stuff really gets in you because it's very skeletons, very bones and blood, so.
Yeah. You can feel that a little bit in the lyrics of this song. So that goes back to what you were saying earlier, that kind of encompasses different parts of this whole record, which makes sense. And we can say what we want about some of those things. Obviously we could probably do a whole podcast about that, but the imagery has found its place in the world for a reason, right? So So, you never, like, it's so funny how often I talk to people of former religious backgrounds or faiths or whatever, that it's still kicking around in their lyrics. It's still like the foundations.
Well, it's great. I mean, it's the greatest story ever told. The guy getting fucking mutilated, and then he saves you, but he first has got to get real mutilated first, and he's all like
Braveheart? Was that Braveheart? Yeah, that was Braveheart.
I mean, Mel Gibson loves torture, and don't we all love someone getting tortured, It always features, there's always, in every, you can think of a Han Solo's getting tortured, in all of our popular movies. Daniel Craig's always getting his balls whipped in movies. It's like, we love torture. We love torture, folks. They love it, But I think there is something of that, like, I think a lot of people have that self-flagellation instinct. I think a lot of people live with guilt, and they don't know what it is, and they wonder why they're distressed, and they have no means to expiate it. Even religion, even is sort of like a bad source, because a lot of people just aren't honest with their priests or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, as if they really confess what they're supposed to every single time, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But again, broken record here, but really cool song, and I just liked that little bit of energy I saw from that. Going to track 8, we've got Fear of Pleasure.
Yeah.
Go ahead and speak to this one.
This is my Santana riffs. Doing a lot of Santana riffs on this one. He's a TERF. It's always funny when you find out like a boomer is a TERF, because it's like, well, what did I expect?
Yeah, well, it was kind of like back, I think it was several years ago, where there would be like these 80 or 90-year-old guys that like owned like an NBA team or something, and they'd come out and say some like horribly horribly racist or misogynistic thing, and people rightfully like blew up about it. But it was also like, what did you? I think it was Bill Burr, the comedian, that said it. Like,
what did you think he thought? What did you think he thought?
Yeah, and that just always sticks with me. It's like, what did I think? The guy from Duck Dynasty, I really thought he was like a progressive communist. It's just.
I mean, that was also like, I mean, some people surprised you. Like the guy that wrote Trade Spotting turned out to be a interpreter. I was like, Irvine Welsh? I didn't expect that one.
People's brains have been broken over the past several years, to be fair, as well.
It happens. It'll happen. But yeah, this one is a deeply a lot of trans themes in this. Fear of pleasure, chief of which, because I mean, that's like one of the mind viruses they use to keep you down. It's just a sex thing. You're just doing it for attention. But yeah, I'm doing it for like the normal amount of like romantic attraction and the normal amount of attention that you're supposed to seek. When you don't have when you feel like bodiless, when you're intensely dysphoric I can't speak for everyone, but at least for myself, when I felt bodiless, I felt like totally anhedonic. There was this just insurmountable anhedonia. And not only that, there was a desire to not transition because there almost became this sense that to have any joy at all would to be like this dissolution of my character, this this actual fear of joy, this fear if you experience too much, then you'll instantly become some sort of indulgent hedonistic nightmare or something like that. When really it's just you're talking about access to very basic joys, dressing a certain way, behaving a certain way, liking who you want and being loved on those terms, these very basic things that nonetheless you develop this sense of fear for. And I don't think this is unique to the trans experience. I think this is this could be with gay, or this could be all sorts of people experience societal restrictions from doing these essentially harmless things that will vastly enrich their lives. And so that's what that song is.
That's what I got from it. This one was pretty easy to it's spelled out pretty well. I think you did a good job on this one of, again, not just being like this is exactly what this is about and throw it in your face and this kind of thing, but it's very, if you read the lyrics especially, it's very,
it's hard to miss this one.
It's hard to miss. Yeah. But great song. Again, this is the one that is the longest song on the record. Doesn't feel like it, which is always cool. I always like when somebody's able to put out a song, this one's almost 2 minutes longer than some of the other songs, and you don't notice it at all because it flows so well. And again, the kind of instrumentation really brings it all together in a really cool way. The next one, I believe, again, I always do this. I listen to the record right before I do the recordings, and of course was on my commute home from work, as I was saying. And so I believe it was track 9. I Hate You All. I believe it was this one, or maybe it was Fear of Pleasure, where it starts off with the tapping. With
Fear of Pleasure starts out with the tapping. It starts out with the,
So I apologize. This is the one that it was a highlight for me instrumentally because of that. Because as a guitar player, I always love when you can hear somebody I don't know. There's something about it in my brain when I start hearing those kind of exercises, especially if someone's
I love them.
Singing melodically over the top of it or something. It's just there's something about it that's angelic, I guess, almost especially the effects you have on it, the very sparkly kind of ambient or reverb on it and all those kinds of things. It was really, really cool. It really kind of brought the kind of
thank you.
Last 3 songs on the record, sort of closing it out, kind of brings in that third act, I guess.
Yeah, we're getting we're getting a little serious here. It's time to be we're getting to the nitty gritty.
Sorry, did you have something else you want to say?
No, I mean, I just like finger tapping, even that, that's just in the vein of how Sweet Child of Mine was just a string skipping exercise that Flash was doing. And then Axl was like, hey, that sounds pretty good. Let's incorporate that into a song, that's how he sounds.
That is how
that's exactly how he talks. And, but that is that chord progression is a very basic, how to teach yourself finger tapping exercise, which nonetheless I liked because it has these very classical, I don't think it's exactly a circle of fifths, but these almost Pachelbel or Bach-y sounding chords to it, where there's one diminished chord in it. And who doesn't like a diminished chord, which sounds so good with finger tapping because, you can get the little tritones in there. It feels so good to hit. I mean, that's what's good about it. I mean, it's so finger tapping for that Bach-y type of just shifting one note chromatically and then it turning into a different passing chord it's unparalleled for that. I mean, that's why Eruption, I rep Eruption. I think Eruption sounds fucking great. Fuck you, people that don't like Eruption, it's so good. How can you not like it? But,
I have an aversion to that song just because.
Of course, yeah.
Just because, I don't know, and I went to, I live here in Illinois, in the middle of nowhere, and so what people, obviously everyone does this in college, but especially when you're in the middle of nowhere, it was just a lot of binge drinking, right? And so one of the games, I don't know if you ever heard of this, but one of the games was Eruption, where they would play the song, and every single time, I forget which word it was, but every single time it was said, somebody would have to kneel down and like chug their entire drink during the entirety of this song. It was really bizarre Midwestern nonsense, but all I can remember is like hating my life when people would make me do this every step of the way. So I'm not someone that hates the song on the usual like level. It's just like something about it like reminds me of like lukewarm, like really
I
terrible
get it.
beer.
Yeah, I have experiential problems with other songs like that as well. Songs that I can never like because they're associated with a terrible sense of memory.
Yeah.
But even, I love Van Halen. I like the stupid songs. That shit is just thrilling to me. I love
fun.
that shit.
It's just fun. There's nothing wrong with a fun, at times cheesy rock riff that just gets stuck in your head over and over and over again. But I digress. Well, going to I Hate You All.
Yeah.
Again, when I first heard this song, in your very nice sounding voice over this, just saying "I hate you all, I hope you die" to start the track, I was like, "This is fantastic! I love every part of this."
Yeah.
So go ahead and break this one down.
I get a lot of being a very publicly visible trans woman. I get a lot of people saying not so nice things to me, and long ago I realized that I can't reply to all of these people and do epic clapback to them, no matter how much I want to, no matter how much I want to call them, start talking like Sephiroth and go Vegeta about it, go, "You impudent fools, how dare you, do you have any idea?" I can't do that. So this was sort of, this is, it's always fun to have feel empowered by just saying, just fuck you, fuck you, you just want to say fucking fuck you. And so this is my way of just doing it to all of those people in a blanket statement without having to respond individually to each one. Because I do see people that try to attack me or try to attack, queer people or, not just queer people, anyone that is othered for any sort of reason, it's inevitably because there's some aspect of their self that they're unsatisfied. This is reductive, but I think it's always that. And I guess I draw that conclusion because I know when I was leaving snarky comments on people's Twitter, it was because I was desperately unhappy with my own life. And it was because of well, if this person is doing something, maybe I can make their day a little worse. And that sense of that small power that you have in that moment to whatever a person is doing, you can always, drag them down a little. So that you have no skill, you have no soul. Also, I can just say it's not just about them too. I'm Jewish. I'm strong anti-Zionist. I fucking hate Israel. It's the worst thing. As someone who's a proud Jew and who believes in the sustenance, it's the worst thing possible for Judaism. It is a deeply anti-Semitic, state to begin with. It's a Hitlerite idea, cordon off all the Jews in one place and, have them do this broad colonialism. So it's just it's also my disgust with Israel and their terrible fucking genocide too, that it's not just, the haters, but, everyone that uses this worship of the false strength, the strength that is not born from humanity and compassion and a desire to make things better, but a desire to theatrically enact your superiority over others. And the reason why they do this is because they are woefully inadequate. You have no skill. You have no soul. There is no violence grand enough to make you whole. And that's what I believe, There's nothing, there's no kill that you can do the way that they're doing it, that can give them any sort of spiritual or emotional or, justifiable humanity that they're seeking out of it, which is why, I hate that. I hate you all.
to circle back, yeah, like to circle the whole thing. Like, I mean, again, like, yeah. So what we got to do, or listeners, just whenever somebody is that much of a prick, you just gotta send over this song that Alex has written, and then you're good to go. It's been spelled out for you. But I mean, you're right. Like I also think like it's so tough. And again, I'm not in your shoes or so many other people's shoes that deal with that on a day-to-day basis of like those absolutely, I mean, I see it, those absolutely vile, despicable, not just comments on the internet, but like, and like people walking around various places or from family members or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, it's so hard. I mean, I can only fathom how difficult it is, because one, the first thing you want to do is tell them, like you said, I hate you, go fuck yourself, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yet part of knows that they're like hoping for that interaction as well. But when you don't combat it, then they're also emboldened at the same time to continue doing it. So in a way, it's the best thing you can do is kind of take a creative force to it and make it a little more well-rounded and long form and creative. And that kind of, it's not just cathartic. It's like literally like fuck all these people.
Yeah.
But like it's like, I think that's like sort of the best outlet to do it, because like half of those people are looking, they're all looking to like make trans people, queer people, etc., feel horrible, feel dehumanized, all those kinds of things. But they're also like looking for that negative interaction, because like you said, they have nothing fucking going on. And that is it's kind of like a kid that learns that like if they can get negative attention, that's the attention they get. It's that same kind of deal from like an adult brain in just a juvenile way, where like they're literally just looking for any interaction from anyone, because they're so like hateful and lost and have like nothing, like you said, just beyond pathetic, but this song spells it out in a very cathartic way, and I absolutely enjoy it.
Thank you.
To go to the last track 10, Use Me. To kind of sum it up, like you said, this one's kind of connected in a way to your first track, Brutalize My Body, but go ahead and speak to this one.
It's a very subby song, obviously there's a Bill Withers song called Use Me, and which is funny because that song is also, is it man, but that's a very subby song, and you read the lyrics to it, not a lot of songs about being a heterosexual male sub, which is, that's good for Bill Withers.
Had to represent,
Exactly, you gotta, but I think, also in that vein, this is like the taking pleasure in the idea of someone using you for sustenance, or the idea of, there is some idea that being a vessel for somebody else's pleasure, which is, the dark, sort of like a dark aspect of femininity. But I think everyone can relate to that, And certainly it's like one of the major aspects of dysphoria is depersonalization. And often in this state of depersonalization, you will find succor in providing needs for others or in being exploited. Actually, one thing that I can, there's a lot of overlap between transness and autism, between neurodivergence, but I often find this is like, you'll see a lot of like exploitation of neurodivergent people, just in capitalism in general, because it's like, you'll have this set of people oftentimes through like a hyperfixation, they will get really good at something. And because they're sort of desperate for any sort of social acceptance, it will be very easy to manipulate them in order to extract labor from them. The animation industry is literally run on this practice, not just the animation, but pretty much every arts industry. It's like, if you are like weird and meek and accommodating because you're like autistic, then it's like all your life you will know having your sort of labor exploited. And that sort of like, but I think that's like not just autism, anyone who does not have that aggressor instinct in them, which is a lot of people, I think that's how like a lot of like people that aren't otherwise othered, come to leftism too, where it's like, are you like a cis-het straight male or what is that, all those things, and what was it for you? Because you just didn't, whatever it was, you just didn't have that aggressor instinct in you.
I think for me, it was like certain, I don't know. It's hard to figure out for me. You know, I think I ask this question all the time on this show of like, where do politics come from? And then for me, it's like, I don't know. I grew up like really religiously conservative, really, really, really religiously conservative.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, it was more like I started to just like feel weird about the things I was being told that were correct. And then when I kind of broke away from that and went to college, and then I had certain people in my life that were very close to me, sort of, it was actually social stuff first.
Yeah.
And it was like, not to talk about me too much here, I'll probably cut a lot of this out, but it was somebody actually around 2014 or so was like that I was really close with, talking sort of like transphobic, anti-trans stuff. And I just like knee-jerk reaction was just like, that feels gross. I don't really like that. That doesn't make any sense to me. What are they doing to you? And so I think for me, I don't know if it was like certain subsects of people I met over the years that just kind of put little things in my brain, but it was just like socially first, it was like, I don't want to be mean to people. So I guess, I don't know. And I don't know.
No, that's it. Like, I would rather be chill than try and hurt somebody was the first decision you made. I want to be chill. That's the thing that, I mean, that was it for me. Ultimately, the emotion or the state that I aspire to, rather than peace, you know, I don't know about peace, but chill, you know, just chill the fuck out, you know, and, you know, contrary to the, you know, opinion of the finger wagging, you know, constantly correcting leftists, I found that the leftists tended to be chiller, you know, they were more accepting group, you know, more, you know, and I think maybe that's why I came to it. Also, because, you know, I was otherized for being, you know, queer and weird. And, you know, all that shit.
Right. Yeah, I think
so. You can come to it easier through that, you know, just by virtue of being otherized.
Just being thrown into the fire of what people's like ugly, reductive and reactive opinions can do personally to you. It can be radicalizing probably much earlier and much more formatively than, you know, someone like me. And as unfortunate as that is to say, that's just the reality of the situation, right? Like,
well, I don't know. I was very like privileged, and I was like a liberal up until age 26 or whatever, you know, but then it's, you know, really clicked.
I forget who you might know this, but it's there's one of my very like Marxist Leninist friends. Whenever I talk to him about me learning new things, especially when it comes to foreign policy or understanding things, he'll be like, "Every day we're killing our inner liberal," and I just kind of always take that to heart, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, every day you choose to have your little treats, you know, here, Chapo, they really started something with the whole treat thing and treatler thing, because it's really true. That is like the thing that is the whole spectacle, is treats, you know, this easy dopamine that we just can't live without constantly, you know,
because then you might actually look at the real world and understand more and more each day what it is, right?
And that's what it is. That's the revelation of John Cage's 433. And also what I think is the best about this sort of like shoegazy or Alex G type sort of textural or music is that it does do that same thing as John Cage, where it acquaints you with the space. I think ultimately I want to do the same thing, just with a lot more notes somehow, and with like stark live performance or something like that.
Well, Alex, thanks so much for breaking down this record again. Psychogeography from artist name Anti-Spectacular from Alex Wood. Thank you so much for breaking this down.
Alex Hood.
Did I say Hood? Did I say Wood? I am so sorry.
I think you said it. I get that a lot. That's fine. I get Alex Wood a lot. Yeah.
Well, I meant I'll edit that. Alex Hood.
That's all right.
Thanks so much for coming on and breaking this down. Again, everyone can find this record on Bandcamp. I'll have that link in the notes below, but it'll just be Anti-Spectacular. Again, anti-spectacular.bandcamp.com. Alex, anyone that hears this, most likely, unless it's, you know, the regular fan base that listenership that I have here, probably knows where to follow you, but go ahead and still plug where people can follow you, your work, all that good stuff. And then one thing I always do at the end is I play a song from the album of the guest that I have on, and I have them choose it. So I want you to plug where people can find you, and then pick a song from the record to play at the end of this.
All right. You can find me we're still on x.com, where I came up, you know, it's getting worse by the day, but it's still on there. All of these handles are under House of Decline, Haus of Decline. It's spelled that way. I don't know why. House of Decline. You can see it on my t-shirt here, if this will get reversed, you know. And so we're on Blue Sky, Instagram, and X, Twitter. Those are the big ones. Had a website, but it's currently in flux right now. So wait for that. There is a podcast which you can find on all podcast places, but it's just going to be music now because I got tired of my opinions. So it's just music now. I'm tired of opinions, especially now that, I just am not good at them. I don't read the news. I don't read in general. Why am I offering opinions? I just make stuff up.
You and the rest of the podcast,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, but it's like I'm doing something about it. I'm stopping.
Yeah.
I'm stopping this. Like my music is way better than my freaking opinions. That's committing to that. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. The song that I like Skeleton as the single. It's got some fun work. It's got some fun passages in there. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. We're going to play Skeleton, again, off of Psychogeography by Anti-Spectacular, a.k.a. Alex. I'm on the Powerless Podcast. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The other shoe to drop for everything to get worse. I'm waiting for the bell.